Hi! In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to derive and identify the four most important chords that we hear in Western music. That would be the 1 chord, 5 chord, the 6 chord, and the 4 chord. If you aren't sure what those numbers mean, don't worry about it. We will get to it. The important thing to understand is that if you look at almost any style of music, including classical music, pop, rock, dance, R&B, hip-hop, whatever you listen to, whatever your interests are, those four chords are going to be forming the majority of the harmonic information behind those songs. And I thought a cool way to start this video would be to scroll through a list of a bunch of songs that use those four chords actually only in one particular order, and you can just sort of see already how much we're working with these four chords. So take a look. As you can see, those are a lot of hit songs right there. And the really cool thing is, at the end of this video, you should be able to play those four chords and actually figure out where they came from. And the cool thing as well is, if you already play an instrument and you've already learned maybe to read tabs or to read a chord sheet and play some songs, if you can actually figure out the theory behind what's going on, which is what we're going to do, you'll be able to start figuring out how to learn songs without music, without tabs, without chord sheets, without a tutorial video. You'll be able to hear a song, figure out how it goes, and play it. And I think that's a really awesome thing. And of course, finally, if you are trying to write your own songs, these four chords, and again, how we derive them, is like the first step in being able to become a songwriter on your own. And so here we go. Why don't we go to the keyboard and start figuring it out? Now that we can see the actual keyboard in front of us, we can take a closer look at the actual notes that we're going to be using to come up with our chords. And the first thing we need to understand about that is the concept in music that we call key, K-E-Y. And what that concept is a way to help us break down all these notes that we see into smaller groups that can be more useful for us. So the first thing we need to understand is that there are 12 unique notes, or as we can actually see with the physical buttons on the keyboard, that occur. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 unique buttons or notes that occur before the pattern that makes up the keyboard repeats itself. So what we can do with that information is first understand that that means there are 12 different ways we can play any melody or sequence of chords. For example, here's Mary Had a Little Lamb in a few different keys. Here it is in one key. Here it is in another key. One more. So even though our brains and our minds could hear that was Mary Had a Little Lamb 3 times, there were actually completely different sets of notes being used to create that melody. And so what we can understand is that the concept of a key, K-E-Y again, is to take all these notes and find a way to narrow them down to make something that we can make melodies and chord sequences out of. And the key that we're going to work in today, the one specific key, which is a collection of notes, is the key of C. And I've already marked the notes here. And C is obviously the most important note in the key of C because it's kind of our home base. And the way we can create all the notes we need to create the collection of notes that's called the key of C is real simple. We start on C and we just go up the white notes until we hit the next C. So from C to C, all the white notes there, that collection of notes is called the key of C, and that's where we're going to be doing our work. And for those of you that have played before, you can hear that sequence as what's often called a major scale. And that terminology, scale, key, is kind of interchangeable. So there we go. And we've narrowed ourselves down from 12 notes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes, because that note repeats. So we've already got our chunk of notes that we're going to be doing our work from. And that chunk or collection of notes is called the key of C. And the thing to remember is there are 12 collections of notes that we can use, and we're only focusing on one of them for this video. Now that we're ready to construct our chords, let's talk about what a chord actually is. The definition of a chord is really simple. It's any 3 notes sounded simultaneously. So that's a chord, that's a chord, that's technically a chord. So it's pretty clear physically what a chord is and visually. The important thing about chords is that chords give context to a melody. The same melody presented with different chords underneath it can sound really different, and it can feel really different. And that's a really important tool to learn once you start writing your own music. So here's an example. We were playing Mary Had a Little Lamb earlier. Let's stick with that. So I'm going to play it twice. First time I'm going to do like a more traditional or simple chord arrangement that you would hear. So here it is. Alright, so there's one way. Here's another way that should sound and feel different. Again, my right hand is going to do exactly the same thing. So there you go, same melody, exact same thing, but sounding and feeling really different. And that's why we want to learn about chords, is it gives us control over that context. All right, so let's go ahead and start constructing our big 4 chords. All right, so our big 4 chords are C major, G major, A minor, and F major. And let's look at the formula to create all of those chords. So the way to create a chord that we're going to be making, which are these major and minor chords in the key of C, is a really, really simple formula in this key. We're still sticking to all the white notes, and all we need to do is think of the name of the chord, find that key, and play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note. It's that simple. So let's start with C major. Let's find C. Here's C. We're going to play the note C, skip this note, play the note E, skip that note, and play the note G. And that's the chord. That's C major. C, E, G. Play a note, skip a note, play a note, skip a note, play a note. And there's your 3 notes that make up the chord. Let's keep going. G major. All right, let's find G. Play a note, skip A, play B, skip C, play D. So we know that G major is made up of the notes G, B, and D. All right, let's continue. A minor. And don't worry about major or minor for now. We're just going to apply that same formula to A. So we're going to start on A, skip B, play C, skip D, play E, and we get A, C, E. That's A minor. All right, and finally the last chord is F major. So play F, skip G, play A, skip B, play C. And that gives us F, A, C, F major. That's it. So I know it took me a while to get here, but it's important to understand the steps that led us here. But really, the chords themselves are quite simple to make, especially in this key of C. So, to recap, C major, C, E, G. G major, G, B, D. A minor, A, C, E. And F major, F, A, C. There it is. That's pretty much all the hits right at your fingertips. Real quick, let's talk about major and minor and what they mean and the differences between them. So of the 4 chords that we've constructed, we've learned that 3 of them are called major chords. That's C, G, and F. And one of them is called a minor chord. That's A minor. Let's look a little more closely to see what that means so you can understand it. So if we look at our major chords, let's look at just the first kind of gap that we have. Remember, we've been playing a note and skipping a note. If we look at C major, let's count the number of piano keys between C and E, the first 2 notes in our chord. There's 1, 2, 3. So there's 3 piano keys or buttons or notes. The technical term in music is they're called half steps or semitones, but don't worry about that for now. There's 3 notes between C and E. Let's look at G and count the spaces between our first 2 notes in the chord, G and B. We have 1, 2, 3. Again, we see there's 3 notes between these 2 notes in the chord. Let's look at F. Between F and A, we have that same pattern of 3. So we can see that. Now let's look at A minor and analyze what's going on between the notes A and C. Let's count. There's 1, 2. There's only 2 keys between A and C as opposed to 3. That is what makes A, the A chord in the key of C minor, is that there's only 2 keys between that space. So this is actually like a smaller space between these 2 notes. And in major note chords, like for example G major, there's 3. So let's say I wanted to make this A minor and A major. Well, what key could I change this to so I have 3 in between? I go up here, right? And now, all of a sudden, 1, 2, 3. We can see that space. We can also hear it. Here's A minor, and here's A major. So that's the difference between major and minor. And yeah, that's why we call it A minor out of those 4 chords. All right, let's move on and take a look at what these numbers also can help us do. Seeing these numbers above the letter names that we've been working with, I'll explain why they're really, really important to think about. We talked about the idea that a key is a collection of notes that are kind of organized and have a logic that we can hear and see to them. And the most important thing about a key is the home base of that key that we actually name the key after. So we've been working the key of C, and that's why we've labeled C as 1. And we have to understand that every note and even every chord in this key, the gravity of the note C is what makes every note and chord sound and feel the way it does in this key. So that's why we've labeled C as 1. It's home base, numero uno. And as we go up, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 1 again when we get to C. Great, so we've reinforced that C is a really important note. And the numbers are really good for another reason. Let's look at our 4 chords again, and let's rename them based on the number that they're based on. So C major is based on 1, so we can call it the 1 chord. G major is based on 5, we can call it the 5 chord. A minor is based on 6, so we call it the 6 chord. F major is based on 4, so we call it the 4 chord. 1, 5, 6, 4. And now we've got these kind of universal names for the chords. I'll explain why those numbers are super useful. Right at the beginning of the video, we talked about the idea that there are 12 unique notes that exist in Western music. That means there's 12 different ways to play a melody and 12 different ways to play a sequence of chords. So what that means is we've only looked at one of the 12 ways of playing these 4 chords when we look at all the different keys in music. And we've also learned that there's some formulas that we've applied to find the chords and know if they're major or minor, know where they are in relation to the other notes. So now that we're thinking of the chords and numbers, it's much, much easier to apply it to any of those other 12 keys. And the relationships are the same, even if the notes are different. So hear that chord sequence one more time. 1, 5, 6, 4. That's in the key of C. I'm going to play those same chords, but in a different key, starting on a different note. It's going to be different buttons and different frequencies, but the relationship is the same and it should sound similar. So in the key of D flat, I'm going to play that same sequence. 1, 5, 6, 4. Here it is in C. 1, 5, 6, 4. So even though they're really different, you can hopefully hear that they're the same relationships. And that's why these numbers are really important. So if you can start to think of notes and chords as these numbers, it's going to be easier to play in other keys. Because if we went back to that, big scrolling list that we had at the beginning of the video, not all of those songs were in the same key. So if we want to be able to learn or write songs in more than one key, we're going to have to understand how to apply these relationships to other keys. And in subsequent videos, I'm going to explain how we do that. But to recap, real simple. We found the key of C. And we've found the notes that work in that key that are all the white notes. We've discovered that our big 4 chords are based on the first note of the scale or the key. That's C major or 1 major. The 5th note, G major or 5 major. The 6th note, 6 minor or A minor. And the 4th note, F major or 4 major. And now that you can create those notes, see if you can have fun. Like, see if you can make up your own song. See if you can play through those chords and start to sing or hear the melodies from that big list that we figured out earlier that had that chord progression going on. So there you go. That's how we find the big 4 chords. And stay tuned. We're going to talk about applying this to other keys.